Hello everyone, my name is Nicholas Schultz, and this is my second language and cultural contact presentations for Spanish 118. For this contact presentation, I went ahead and continued some of my listening and viewing experiences from the previous cultural contact project, as well as introduced some new material as well. So just as I had previously, I watched a couple of hours of Los Spookies. I also started a new television series known as Extra, which is basically a version of the American show Friends set in Spain, and I watched about 2 hours of that. Additionally, I continued to listen to some podcasts, so I continued my listening of Historias Perdidas, or The Lost Histories, and then I also introduced a new podcast known as Escuela Sangre, or School of Blood, which is kind of a horror comedy podcast. Some new vocabulary that I gleaned from these contact experiences include agradable, el secreto, la maleta, el horno, estupendo, or estupienda, los lobos, único, el banco, robar, planificar, la sangre, ladrón, ladrona, asesino, asesina, fábrico, moneda, miedo, morir. Some new phrases and colloquialisms that I learned were ¿qué tal? Or ¿qué onda? Which means what's up. No manches, which is no way or you're kidding me. Ni modo, which means it is what it is. No hay bronca, there is no problem. Relájate un poco, meaning relax a little. And then órale, which means let's get to it, or go for it, or let's go. And then something that was kind of interesting was a phrase that I learned called aguas, which if you guys have done the reading, you know that agua means water, but in the right context, instead with enough inflection and emphasis, aguas, instead of meaning waters, can mean careful or watch out. And now we get into the meat of this presentation, which is the cultural comparison and contrasting between my own Anglo-American culture and that of Latin American and Spanish-speaking cultures in general. And I say cultures because obviously there are many. And ultimately my observations, which are largely a continuation of what I observed from the first cultural contact presentation and all the new media that I consumed up till now, all of these observations and new points and comparison contrasting can be boiled down into three main factors, and that includes family values, social status, and the concept of punctuality. Now, the first and most salient point that I observed is there's a stark difference between the concept of family values between Latin American cultures and U.S. cultures. And what I mean by that is whether we're talking comedy or a horror podcast or what have you, family comes first above all else, or so it would seem, in most Latin American cultures. Family comes as a priority. There is a very strong intergenerational and interfamilial connection. Even if someone's your second or third cousin, they still regard and covet that family tie. In U.S. cultures, outside of the nuclear family, the mother, the father, and the children, maybe some grandparents, that extended family often falls by the wayside. And even the immediate nuclear family can be pushed aside for topics such as stress or work or anything like that. So this was just a major thing. Although I'm connected to my family, this observation of this interconnectedness between families was something that I observed pretty exclusively or unique to Latin American cultures compared to U.S. culture. Now moving on to social status. In Latin American cultures, it appears that position and status are more valued than, let's say, money in these sorts of cultures. And what I mean by that is, and what other research has shown, and by research in this case, I mean some independently researched articles that I found on the internet simply by searching Latin American culture and social status, it would appear that title and position are much more important than what you actually have financially. That is, if you have a title and you have a position, it's important that you show that status, whether that's having a nice house or nice cars or having nice things, dressing very nicely. That appears to be the ultimate status symbol, how you're viewed in the eyes of your community. Whereas in U.S. culture, largely money appears to be that status symbol. Now, if you go on to use that money to buy new things and whatnot, that's up to you, but money appears to be the ultimate status symbol. Lastly, the concept of punctuality was kind of different between Latin American cultures and U.S. cultures. And what I mean by that is, in the U.S., punctuality is highly coveted. That is, if you say you're going to meet someone at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to meet them at 8 o'clock in the morning. But if you look at a lot of the verbiage that we have learned, and you look at a lot of the media that is out there, when people from Spanish-speaking and Latin American cultures are making plans, unless they really need to set a time, they'll say de la mañana, or en la mañana, or de la tarde. They'll give you these abstract timeframes that are open to interpretation and will clarify when necessary what time they actually mean. But for the most part, they leave these timeframes, this punctuality question, fairly open-ended. And that is all. Thank you everyone for listening, and please, if you have any questions or suggestions, please post them below.